What if I told you that some of the biggest global events were shaped by hidden hands? The CIA, America's most secretive intelligence agency, has conducted operations that have influenced entire nations, sometimes with devastating consequences. From toppling governments to mind control experiments, today we reveal the most dangerous CIA operations that were never meant to see the light of day. We're talking about the CIA, man, America's most secretive intelligence agency. They've been running covert ops for decades, influencing entire nations, sometimes with absolutely insane consequences. It's some real cloak and dagger stuff. This is the stuff they don't want you to know about. Imagine a world where the government experiments on its own citizens without their knowledge. Sounds like some crazy science fiction, right? Like some Manchurian Candidate type stuff. Well, buckle up, because that was the reality of MK Ultra. We're talking about the CIA messing with people's minds, man. This was back in the 50s and 60s during the Cold War. The CIA was obsessed with mind control. They wanted to create the perfect spies, people they could program to do their bidding. So they started dosing unsuspecting Americans with LSD, other hallucinogens, even hypnotizing them, all in the name of national security. They even experimented on their own agents, which, let me tell you, is messed up. Can you imagine the ethical violations? People's lives were destroyed, man. MK Ultra is a chilling reminder of what happens when power goes unchecked. In 1953, a single CIA operation changed the Middle East forever. It's a story of political intrigue, betrayal, and the unintended consequences of messing with another country's government. This is the story of Operation Ajax. Now, Iran was a very different place back then. It had a democratically elected Prime Minister, Mohammad Mossadegh, who wanted to nationalize Iran's oil industry. That didn't sit well with the British, who had been exploiting Iran's oil for decades. So they went to the CIA, and together they hatched a plan to overthrow Mossadegh and install a pro-Western leader. The CIA bribed politicians, spread propaganda, and even hired street thugs to create chaos in the streets. They made it seem like Mossadegh was losing control, that the country was on the verge of collapse. And guess what? It worked. Operation Ajax is a prime example of how the CIA's meddling can have far-reaching and often disastrous consequences. What if I told you that the US government actually considered staging terrorist attacks against its own citizens? I'm talking about a real wag-the-dog scenario where they fake a threat to justify a war. That's exactly what Operation Northwoods was all about. In the early 60s, the CIA was obsessed with Cuba and getting rid of Fidel Castro. They'd already tried to assassinate him multiple times, but nothing worked. So they came up with this insane plan to create a pretext for invading Cuba. We're talking about blowing up American ships, hijacking planes, even staging attacks on US soil and blaming it on Cuba. Thankfully, President Kennedy saw right through this and shut the whole thing down. Operation Northwoods is a stark reminder of the lengths some people are willing to go to achieve their goals, even if it means sacrificing innocent lives. After World War II, the US and the Soviet Union were locked in this ideological battle, the Cold War. Both sides were scrambling to gain an edge, and one of the most valuable assets was scientific knowledge. See, the Nazis had some brilliant minds working for them, developing rockets, weapons, all sorts of advanced technology. So the US came up with this plan, Operation Paperclip, to secretly bring these Nazi scientists to America, not to face justice for their war crimes, but to work for the US government. They recruited Werner von Braun, the guy who designed the V-2 rocket for the Nazis, and hundreds of other scientists, engineers, and technicians. They justified it by saying it was all in the name of national security, that these scientists were valuable assets in the fight against communism. Operation Paperclip raises some serious ethical questions. You might think the CIA is all about foreign espionage, operating in the shadows in other countries, but what if I told you they were spying on Americans right here on US soil? That's exactly what happened with Operation Chaos. In the 1960s, America was a hotbed of social unrest. The CIA, under President Nixon, became convinced that these movements were being influenced by foreign powers, specifically the communists. So they launched Operation Chaos, a massive domestic spying program. They infiltrated activist groups, spied on journalists, intercepted mail, tapped phones, the whole 9 yards. They were building files on thousands of Americans, violating their privacy and their constitutional rights. Operation Chaos was a blatant abuse of power, and it showed how easily a government agency can turn on its own people. These are just some of the CIA's most controversial operations. But what about the ones we still don't know about? How much power should intelligence agencies have? Are these operations necessary evils, or do they cross the line? Let us know your thoughts in the comments, and remember, truth is often stranger than fiction.